4 Central, 5 Eastern. And today we are knee deep in the midst of Tenor Month. And we've got an incredible artist to share with you. Let's see if I can get this thing out of here. Let's see. Here we go. This guy right here. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Where is Limmie? Limmie disappeared from my screen. There we go. Okay, so here we go. This guy right here, Limmie Pulliam. If you are unfamiliar with this artist, I suggest you sprint to your nearest YouTube and type in this guy's name and listen to him sing some stuff that is going to blow your socks off. So, with no further ado, let's bring Limmie into the stream. Limmie, are you there with us?
I am here.
There we go. All right. Fantastic. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. You having an okay
Good.
week?
Okay, week. It's been kind of a crazy week for me. I've been dealing with a lot of postnasal drip this week, so it's as a singer, you can relate to that.
Of
And,
course, of course. Hey, let me hop on my Facebook real quick. I just want to make sure I share this.
okay.
And feel free to share from my profile. I'm going to share this to my fan page, but I just want to make sure that as many people can see this as possible. Share page. Come on now, my computer is struggling. It can do it. You can do it.
Share this here.
There
I
we go.
will paste because I need to share this.
There we go.
Share now with friends.
Yeah, you can share it public if you want. That way more people can find it. This was all part of the learning process for me. When I initially started doing these talks, I didn't realize that it had to be public in order for people to look at it that aren't your friends, I guess. And
Yeah,
there's a few things that I've been significantly on the struggle bus under with the live streaming and the trying to figure out this whole audio interface stuff with
yeah.
recording.
It's a pretty steep learning curve, and we haven't
It
had much
is.
time to do it. So
It
we
is.
have
We all can't be Quincy Jones over there with the
no.
drop down mic in the recording studio. Um, so yeah, I was telling you when we talked earlier this week, this is the first interview that I'm doing on this series where I'm not talking to one of my best friends, right? We met recently because we're both managed by Alex Fletcher with Fletcher
Yeah,
Artist Management, which I guess we should totally say we should drop the bomb
the big news.
fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Check out.
Management just launched our new venture, Fame, Fletcher Artist Management Entertainment, and it is filled with will be filled with lots of content for members of our roster.
Yeah,
You want to hear Weston sing some Garth Brooks?
yeah. Or you want to see here? Let me sing some Rent. It's some good stuff. It's really cool that in a time like we're faced with right now, where we're all out of work,
Yeah,
it gives us an opportunity to express ourselves creatively and artistically in ways that oftentimes we never get to do. I mean,
right,
it's pretty cool. And again, almost 100% of the proceeds go to the artist. So
exactly.
I think it's gonna be a cool thing that really does catch on for people who are interested in us as performers to see, a different side of us, which I think is really, really interesting.
Yeah, because there's not too many chances you're going to get to see, you know, one of the best Verdi baritones in the world sing Garth Brooks.
You're too kind. You're too kind. But as I was saying, we met at Fletcher Artist Management 10-year anniversary party last year in New
Mhm.
York, and I have to say that I lived under a rock because I wasn't even familiar with who you were until our mutual friend Jennifer Forney said,
Yeah,
"Oh my gosh, Weston, you have to listen to this tenor. He's the most amazing tenor on earth. Oh my god, he's amazing." And I'm like, "Okay, well, who is he?" And so I started looking you up, and I was like, how do I not know this guy? Like, I can't, it's unbelievable. And of course, as we start to talk, we've realized that we've got some mutual friends and everything, but
yeah.
just unbelievable. So share with us a little bit, how did you get started into singing? When did you first realize that you had a voice, and talk a little bit about your early education?
Well, I mean, I've always sung. Um, I grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor.
Okay.
Uh, so almost really didn't have a choice but to do something. involved with the church, and you know, I sang, I played the drums. Um, it didn't come from my immediate family isn't necessarily musical. My dad does play a little bit of guitar. Neither one of them are my parents are singers. Um, my larger family has some singers in it. My uncle was a fairly well-known gospel singer from this area.
Okay.
Uh, I had a cousin who recorded with the Stax record label back in the '70s in Memphis um, under another name, Vita Brown. Um, and But I started singing in church and in the youth group, and I learned early on that there was something about my voice that moved people. But singing wasn't necessarily something I was interested in. I was a jock to the core. I wanted to play sports. I played baseball, played football, played basketball. Any sport I could get into, I played it.
And this was in Missouri.
This was in Missouri, in Kennett, Missouri, um, and which is where I still live.
Yeah.
And you know, who knew? Nobody knew at the time that how special and talented the people from Kennett were. Because I look back now, and we have some well-known country artists who grew up here. We've got a rock legend who grew up here. And I mean, her mom was my piano teacher when I started taking piano lessons in my junior year of high school. Cheryl Crow.
Oh, sure.
Grew up. Yeah, so Cheryl's mom was my piano teacher when I started taking lessons my junior year of high school. And I was a horrible piano student. but
Not
but
because
yeah,
of her.
Unlike her, she can play just about anything she puts her hand on. But it was probably middle school was when I first joined. Sixth grade is when I first joined the chorus
Okay.
in school, and that was only because my friends were there. All my friends were in chorus. I hadn't really had no interest in it, but all my friends were there, so that's why I wanted to be.
Sure.
So I joined and was singing bass in the chorus in sixth grade. Um, just getting by, nothing special. Whenever there's a low note, then I would sing it, and everybody would be like, "Okay, there you go."
Right.
It was seventh grade that was when things really started to change. Um, I was a class clown growing up, and I used to want to be on top of an athlete. I wanted to be a comedian. And I used to love to do impersonations. So I did a lot of impersonations of different people: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Stevie Wonder, just random impersonations.
Okay.
And so we were in the chorus one day, and a couple of my friends kept nagging our teacher, "Oh, you got to hear Limmie do this impersonation. You got to hear Limmie do this impersonation of Stevie Wonder." And she didn't think I was anything special at the time. She said, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. If you all sing through all of your music today, no shenanigans, you know, no horseplay, I'll let Limmie do his impersonation." So they did their thing. They sang. We got through the class. And about 3 minutes before the bell, she says, "Okay, come on up and do your impersonation, Limmie." She wasn't expecting much, but I had perfected this Stevie Wonder impersonation back
You got to give us a little taste.
then. No, but I mean, I had everything down to the,
No.
and so I started singing. I just called to say I love you, and it started to go up in range. And she was like, "Wait,
So I thought you were a bass.
you're not a bass. You're just lazy." And from there, she started slowly moving. She moved me up to the second, to the baritone part.
Sure.
I was still kind of at that point. It's like, oh, that's too high. Anything above a middle C, I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. But I was hitting things far above middle C in the Stevie Wonder song.
Sure, when you're doing an impersonation.
Yeah. And so it was eighth grade, my voice changed like overnight. Eighth grade, after eighth grade year, between the summer between my eighth and ninth grade year, my voice just, I didn't go through that whole, oh man, hi guys, how are you? I never went through that phase. It was
Wow.
like I went to bed one night and woke up the next day and the voice had changed. So I came back my freshman year and I was a first tenor in choir. Um,
Now that was from doing an audition for your high school choir director and then realizing
yeah,
that when you say your voice changed, you're saying that you just had a much easier access to
I had
the
easier access to the top, you
okay.
know, that I didn't think I ever had before, which
And
when I
and
did,
and and at this point, no formal training, like, not you're not
no
having
problem
private
finding it.
voice lessons or anything, just
Never had a formal voice lesson. From just singing in the school choir, church choir,
yeah,
solos at church. Um,
and
I
impersonations.
just kind of, I got into theater in school, in high school. Did my first musical as a freshman and sang Nicely, Nicely Johnson and Guys and Dolls. Um, what else did I do? I did The Mystery of Edwin Drood, Pippin, and there was a couple other shows. And then I did some straight plays and whatnot too.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but it was my junior year of high school was things really, when I was introduced to opera. Um, we were in class one day. My teacher said, "Hey, Limmie, I need you to stay after class." I thought I was in trouble, which wouldn't have been anything surprising.
Uh-huh.
Um, and she just wanted to talk. She said, "We're getting ready to do our solo and ensemble. I'd like you to do a solo." I'd done solos before. She goes, "I want you to do something. This is different than what you've been doing before." And so she handed me a piece of music and she says, "I know you don't know the language. Don't worry about that. I want you to take this cassette tape and listen to it. It's already set up at the track you need. I want you to listen to this and basically learn the words listening to this guy sing." The track she gave me was Una furtiva lagrima from La Lisia d'Amore.
Wow.
And it was Luciano Pavarotti singing on a cassette tape. This guy right back
I was
here.
just gonna say the guy that's over your shoulder.
So she gives me this recording. I listened to it a couple times and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And so I learned it. We worked on it. Still never had any real formal training. We took it to contest, and at the time we were doing blind auditions for contests, so the
Mm.
judges didn't see us. So I went in and we sang and sang the song. She said, "I don't know if you imitate people. Can you kind of imitate this guy when you go in and sing the song, imitating Pavarotti?"
I guess there's worse people you could imitate.
Yeah. So I went in and sang, and we walked out afterwards. And as we were walking down the hall, the door opens, and out walks who we think is the judge. And she basically yells and stops everyone in the hallway and says, "I don't know who." Did I just freeze up on you? Oh,
Yeah,
there we
the image is frozen, but I'm not oh, there, I think we're back.
go. So she
Uh,
yells out, she goes, "I don't know who was just here singing, but whoever you are, can you come back here at such and such time with your teacher?" And we were like, okay, yeah. So we waited and came back at that time. And
yeah.
she introduced herself. She was a voice teacher out of St. Louis. And I can't remember her name at the time right now. Um, but she asked lots of questions. What are you interested in? Are you interested in music? Do you want to be a singer?
Yeah.
Um, and she said, "Can I get your name and address?" And she said, I want to introduce you to someone." And I said, "Sure." My teacher gave it to her. Actually, she gave her the address of the school, and she sent the information to the school. So about 3 weeks later, this package shows up at the school for me, and it's an informational packet from Oberlin Conservatory of Music.
Oh wow.
And so we call and speak with the lady again. And she said, have you heard of this teacher named Richard Miller? I said, no, can't say that I have. And she goes, well, he's probably one of the most well-known teachers in the world
Right.
right now.
It's like,
And I think he would be a great teacher for you. Um, she goes, look at your informational packet, read about the school, see if it's something you might be interested in. So I opened the packet. There was a video. I didn't feel like reading all the information, so I popped the video in. And this was early '90s, so he was still really big at the time. Narrating the video was Bill Cosby, which back then it was like, wow, they got Bill Cosby to narrate the video for the school.
did he have an affiliation with the conservatory?
He was a huge donor to the jazz department there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he had been a donor there for years, and was good friends with a lot of the jazz faculty there.
Okay.
He so I did listen to the video, watched the video and over, kind of fell in love with the town through this video because it reminded me a lot of where I grew up. Though it's not a college town, Kennett is a small town. I didn't necessarily want to go to a big city right away.
Right.
So I, went through the audition process, and did my 3 audition pieces. One of which was the Una Furtiva. The other was the Pietà Signore, and I think the Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair. No, Una Furtiva, Stenchen, the Schubert,
Yeah.
and Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair. And sent my audition in, and I heard back from about 2 weeks later. I get a phone call from one of the voice faculty, and she introduces herself and says, we got your audition tape. We were very impressed with what we heard. I just wanted to talk to you about your application. On your teacher selection, you only listed one name. And said, we gave you a line so you could list 3 options. Richard Miller was the only person I knew there. He the only person I'd ever heard of at that point. So I basically wrote his name on all 3 lines.
You were consistent and persistent. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said, it's very difficult to get into his studio. He's very sought after internationally. He basically handpicks his students, and he's out of the country for the next 2 weeks. So you'll have to wait. And she goes, if you want to put other options in, you can. And I wasn't trying to be cocky, but it came off as cocky. I was like, well, if he doesn't really want me, I probably won't come there.
Right.
And luckily, he wanted me. Oberlin, as you know, is an expensive school. Yeah. There was no way my family could afford it. But he made it happen. I don't know what strings he pulled, but next thing I know, I was an incoming freshman at Oberlin.
Wow.
And up until that point, I'd only had one or 2 formal voice lessons that I had taken at a choir camp in Arkansas with who's a good friend of mine now, but he teaches at the University of Tennessee, Andrew Skoog. I don't know if you've ever come across Andrew.
Sure. I know that name. Yeah.
Andrew gave me my first couple of formal voice lessons. At his dad was teaching choral music at Arkansas State University, and he came in as a guest, and my teacher talked him into giving me a couple lessons. And that was the first time I'd heard a real live tenor was with Andrew.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm just going on and on. Stop me if I'm rambling.
Fantastic. I mean, who in the world actually gets to have as their first voice teacher Richard Miller, literally the guy that wrote the book? I mean, that's pretty amazing. So talk to us a little bit, moving on in time. what were some of the things that I mean, obviously you had the talent and you have the natural gift, but what sort of technical things did you guys sort of immediately get into during your studies there with Richard Miller, based on what you had experienced with your choral singing and based on what you had sort of figured out along the way by listening to a tape of Pav singing Una Furtiva or whatever else it was? What were some of the things that you had to adjust?
Well, one of the probably the biggest thing we worked on was evening out the passaggi points. Um, but I didn't realize how lucky I had been until the end of my freshman year, end of the first half of my freshman year,
Yeah.
as I was getting ready to go home for Christmas. Mr. Miller told me in my last lesson. He said, "I want you to do me a favor." He said, "I know you don't think you ever had any real formal training, but when you go home, I want you to make a point to go visit your choral director and tell her thank you for what she's taught you without you even realizing it." Um, I didn't realize the things I had learned just from listening to her in choral class in the choir. Um, he said, there's not many freshmen who come in with what you have, and you know you need to thank her for not basically ruining
Yeah.
this natural talent that you seem to have. And that was one of the big things that always stuck with me was when he said that. And but you know, as far as technical things, I guess I was lucky or blessed in the aspect that a lot of things just kind of came to me naturally. If I tried to do something to make a certain sound,
Hmm.
that's when I found myself getting into trouble. Um, but if I just let things happen occur naturally, then it would just kind of things would just fall into place.
Here,
Um,
here again, I'm gonna say my favorite quote from Lamperti's vocal wisdom: "The difficulty in learning how to sing is finding its simplicity."
yeah,
And I think that all too often people don't have the great fortune of an amazing first teacher or an amazing choral conductor who really helped establish a healthy vocal technique and understanding of singing. And you have to unlearn all these things, but in an attempt to put on top of what you're already doing an operatic sound, whatever that is, you end up getting entangled muscularly to a point
yeah,
where you feel like you said, to use your words, you make a sound as opposed to just allowing your voice to speak cleanly and plainly. And what comes out is, getting back to that sort of primal, natural approach to singing.
yeah. It was one of those things where once we realized where I was in my development stage, um, a lot of it spent a lot of time. As I look back on it now, Miller held me back a bit. He didn't hold me not developmentally.
Sure.
I think he had some kind of view into the future on what I would be singing. So he kind of held me back in a sense from certain type of repertoire. You know, I would always, I came
Well, between the ages of 18 and 21 or 22, I'd say
in.
you damn better shouldn't be singing Otello or Koloff or any
No,
of the other.
none of that. But I came into a studio that was filled with amazing talent. So I learned early on that I had to when it was my turn, I had to bring it.
Sure.
As a freshman, I grew up in studio class every week. I would see singers like David Miller, who now sings with Il Divo,
Yep.
Sean Haywood, who's a fabulous tenor, Scott Hogshead, Vitaly Rosinko. Um, oh gosh, we had Frank Hernandez, who
Oh,
was an
sure.
amazing baritone. These were the people I was listening to every week in studio class, and would have to get up and sing after these people. And I'd come from a place where I was the big fish, and Kenneth.
Right.
Uh, Now I was just another great voice, another talented voice in a studio full of talented voices.
Right.
And I've never been so inspired week after week to just sit and listen and learn from my classmates, my studio mates, my friends. And, but, I would hear them singing certain things and I would be like, oh man, I would love to do that. And Richard would be like, no, not yet. No, 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 not just yet. And, but he was great about that. And every now and then he would be like, okay, let's have some fun. Let's sing some, Cavaradossi or something like that.
Right. Right.
And,
But
but
how
he was
cool.
good about, huh?
I said, how cool is that? I mean, somebody who makes sure that you understand that you are on a very specific path and we're not going to jump and skip steps, right? We're going to make
Right.
sure that, as your voice and body develops, and then we will apply the appropriate repertoire. But at the same time, he himself being a great guy, is like, all right, let's take a look at Recondita or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. And it started after a while, once I gained a bit more knowledge about the repertoire and opera itself, he asked that I make out a 5, 10, and a 15-year plan. What I'd like to be singing in 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years.
Wow.
And so we did it, and he looked at it and he goes, this is actually quite possible. Because at the time, I never imagined that I would be able to sing some of the repertoire that I'm singing, that I'm able to sing now. That was never even on my radar. I expected to be, um, singing Rodolfo's and Alfredo's for the rest of my life, and was perfectly happy with that.
Hmm.
Um, and so as we continued to study, it wasn't until I always get these operas backwards. I think my junior year at Oberlin is where I really think I found my voice and realized that I was on a different trajectory. Um, and that was when, was it my junior or senior year? Well, they decided they wanted to start doing operas in the original language at Oberlin.
Okay. Smart
And
opinion.
so they'd always done things in English. We had a new opera director. The first opera we did which would have been my junior year, was Romeo and Juliet, and I sang Romeo. Um, great piece. Loved it. It was beautiful lyric music. I was able to do, basically showcase everything I could do with my voice. The next year, they decided to do Carmen,
Okay.
and I was a little hesitant at first when they posted it, and Miller and I had it sat down and talk, and I said, "Wait, you know, are they serious about doing Carmen next year?" And he said, "Yeah, I think they are, and I think you can do it." And I said, "I don't think so. This is not, this is not something that you would let me sing." And he goes, "Well, Limmie, I think you can do it. I know you can do it." So I did the audition and was cast as Jose. I spent the summer learning the role. That summer, I actually went to a festival in Italy, and I'm not sure if it's still going on. It's called the Epcaso, the Ezio
Yeah.
Pinza
Yeah, I've heard of that. Sure.
program.
Yeah.
And so I went there and worked with Claudia Pinza and Enza Ferrari, who's a great Italian coach, and several others. And I remember taking my score into a coaching, and I set it on the score. I set it on the piano, and Enza looks at it and she goes, "No, Tu non canti questo. And I said, but I have to learn it because I'm
I've already been
singing.
cast.
Yeah, I've already been cast at my school. And she goes, no, I will not teach you this role. I will not be responsible for ruining your voice.
Wow.
So I started working on it on my own. Luckily, about halfway through the program, the Italian conductor Maurizio Arena came to visit, and I sang in a master class with him. And we were sitting and talking afterwards, and I asked him, I said, Maestro, I have to learn a role for a college. The other coaches here won't teach it to me. Would you be willing to work with me on this role to make sure I learn it correctly? And he said, what's the role? I said, Don Jose and Carmen. He says, it's a little big for you, but I'll work on it with you. So he basically taught me the role
Wow.
cover to cover. I came back to Oberlin and got into the rehearsal process. And it was one night during the rehearsals when we were blocking and staging the final scene that it was like something clicked and everything just became so much easier for me vocally. And I was able to do things vocally that I had always wanted to do, but for some reason couldn't get the mechanics just right to be able to do it. And it was during that final scene that, as we were doing a run through, that it was just like this light bulb moment for me. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be singing. This is
Yeah.
the type of repertoire that my voice is suited for. Because they were trying to be careful and say, oh, we're going to limit the number of rehearsals. We don't want you singing too much, blah, blah, blah. But the more I sang it, the stronger my voice got, the more secure I became technically. And Miller caught on to that. So we started taking bits and pieces of the role and turning them into vocalises and exercises that we could use to continue on this path that I had discovered through this role. And many of the issues I had prior to that just kind of vanished.
Can you talk a little bit more in detail about, you say the issues vanished. What sort of issues were you facing, and what kind of, when you say the
I,
aha moment, what was it that you felt technically opened up for you, or I don't know if it closed or opened or what you were doing, but what was it that happened?
it was actually more opening. I had a tendency at one point to cover too much going through the passaggio. And part of that was more of I guess, of trying to protect the voice a bit,
Hmm.
because I was afraid of getting too open and being
Where
shouty.
where would you start that passaggio? B flat, B natural, or
It it was more the sec going into the second passaggio.
okay,
Um, I never had it was more around the going from the F sharp, G, but the one note I always had issues with was the F. It was either
whether to keep it open or let it turn, or
Yeah, I was always afraid of doing it too open, and I would usually cover it too much.
hmm.
Yeah, I would get one of those kind of, and but the more I realized that what sounded open to me wasn't very open to the listener,
Hmm.
that's when things really started to click for me. And I started to get an easier access to my top, which had really never been an issue. I've always had a pretty solid top. Once we found it, it's always been solid. But getting there was work prior to this, to figuring out how to access that area, that region of the voice.
Hmm.
It was a lot of work, and I would expend more energy gearing up to get to that point than I really needed to actually access it to get there.
And you think that that was built from like a sense of sort of insecurity on maybe a misstep and in order to sing the top, I've got to have this kind of muscular effort, or it needs to be
Yeah,
able to be
you know,
more.
it was out of a number of things. It matter of insecurity. It was always one of those things of this fear of cracking.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because you always, at a certain point, you feel like you can't really control it, and you're like, okay, I'm about that close to just noodling this thing up here, and I was always afraid to get to that point.
but I mean, and I'm sure you've discovered this, but I mean, don't you agree that like, all what is cracking, right? Cracking is that muscular tension and that muscular effort that we sometimes unwantedly sing with, that
Hmm.
lets go for a second. And as soon as that muscular tension lets go, then the crack happens. But if you learn to allow the lower torso to do the work for you, and you
Right.
don't allow this to have so much involvement, it's almost as if you're always sort of shooting to sing in the crack. And
Hmm.
therefore, I think good singing should never feel controlled, right? It's a matter
Right.
of, sure, that the body is controlling it. Of course, we're trying to be as efficient as we can with our breath and with how we, pronounce the text and so forth. But as far as the effort involved to produce the sound, ideally, it's how do you get the biggest bang for your buck with the least amount of effort, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, it usually feels like you're not doing anything, right?
Yeah. It's effortless at that point. But it was just one of those things where I had this idea in my head of this is the sound. This is what I have to do to get that sound.
Right.
And it was kind of like one of those moments. You have one of those aha moments when you hear certain things. I don't know if you remember seeing last year. There was a video floating around of Joyce DiDonato in one of her master classes where she was helping a young soprano,
Yeah.
and she said something to her about don't try to recreate the sound, but analyze and go through the process that you did to get there.
Right.
Um, and that was a lesson I needed to learn, was to not try to create the sound, but to analyze the process or the processes that I went through to get there. Because it was easy for me to want to create those sounds because of this talent I had for impersonation.
Yeah.
Where I could hear something and be like, "Oh, I can just mimic that," and you know. But when it came to singing opera, that would only take me so far.
Yeah.
Um, so I had to hunker down and really work to get to that point, to get beyond this the insecurities and the fear of possibly making a sound that wasn't pleasant to
Right.
other people, um, of making a mistake. I was always afraid of making a mistake, because as a tenor, as a black tenor, um, from the very beginning of this journey, I was always told that you're going to have to be twice as good as everybody else, um, because that's just how the world is. Um, you can't be just as good
Right.
as so and so. You got to be better, and that was always in the back of my mind. Is that sure? I have to be. Yeah, that was good, but I can make it better. It's got to be
Yeah.
better. It's got to be better, and that's always been the driving force, um, kind of behind, um, me as an artist. Is that yeah, that was good, but I think I can make it better than that.
Well, I mean, that's an excellent mantra, just to sort of for everyone to keep, and never be satisfied with what you might think is the best that you can produce. We can always make it better. But it also reminds, I don't know if you saw Karen Slack and Stephanie Blythe's conversation, on her Kiki conversations, but Stephanie mentioned something similar to that, talking about her size. And
Hmm.
she says it's okay to be big, but
Yeah,
just like what you said, you've just got to be better than everybody else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because we joked about it a bit in a way back in those days with Miller, and I obviously wasn't as sizable then. I was much younger and a little bit more svelte.
Sure.
Uh, but I called it jokingly the double whammy to be big and black in this industry. It's kind of is almost kind of two strikes against you from the very start. So you have to work extra hard um, to set yourself apart from everyone else. And that's one thing I've always kind of prided myself on is that no matter what I've sung, I think I've always been able to set myself apart from anyone else singing that type of repertoire.
Well,
Uh,
anybody that's heard you, I think, would agree with that. I was just noticing in our comments, Rafael Porto, sending you some love, gents. Never met you, Lemmy, but Jesus, I've listened about everything online I found. Outstanding. Dan Sutton says
thanks,
hello.
Bill.
Fantastic baritone. Stephen Costello says you guys should break out into the Otello duet. Let's see.
I actually sang my first Otello with Daniel. With
Oh,
Daniel,
you did? He's
yeah,
fantastic. That guy's
yeah.
awesome.
So
Uh,
that was a huge lesson for me because I was sick as a dog for this performance, and I couldn't have asked for better colleagues to be on stage with because Daniel had years of experience and he could feel me as I started to tense up in moments where I was worried if the sound was going to come out.
mhm.
We were at the Phoenicia Festival in upstate New York with Louis and Maria
Oh,
Odie,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and we had gone through all of our rehearsals, was perfect. Woke up the morning of the show and I couldn't talk. I
Wow.
came down with some type of respiratory infection, cold type thing. And so I spent the entire day just trying to get things moving and
Mm,
vibrating in order to get through this performance. And, there were times when we were on stage, especially in the duet, where, you
yeah.
know, Daniel changed the blocking so that he could be nearer to me. And as I was singing, I could just hear him whispering, "You're okay. You're okay.
Right?
Relax.
Put your hand on your shoulder,
Yeah,
kinda relaxing.
relax. Just relax. No, 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 no. Just relax. It sounds great. Just relax." And I was like, I would never have gotten through that performance without that type of support. And I'll be forever grateful to him for that because, uh, I thought I'd picked the perfect place to try out my first Otello. Was there with Louis and Maria, and they were such a huge support to me. And and then for them to surround me with people like Daniel and Eleni Kalenos and oh gosh, um, so many others I can't think of the names right now,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
everyone was just so supportive to help me get through that performance because I was terrified when I woke up that morning and nothing was coming out. And yeah, we got through it. We got through it. So
That's awesome. And then we got, Alexis Davis. "Your voice brings the thunder." Indeed it does, Alexis. Ragida Slovo from South Africa is here. That's awesome.
that's my little
Jared
brother,
Okay.
my little
Jared
South African brother.
Abby Gay. Elizabeth Berger says hello to you both. Great to see you both here. And George Osha, great to see and hear you, Lim. So yeah, I think those of us who have heard you sing, uh, there's no question that you set yourself apart in this repertoire. And so you had mentioned though, so things were rolling. You got to your junior year. You started getting some contracts to perform professionally. Um, you left? You ended up leaving Oberlin before you
I
graduated?
did. I left. I ended up leaving Oberlin early, and was working professionally. Um, it was one of those things where um, the financials and just being unable to really to afford the school, and I wasn't the greatest student. I had never had any training in music theory coming from southeastern Missouri. I'd only had a year of piano prior to going into this illustrious conservatory.
Right.
And so yeah, it got the best of me. But I had these offers to go out and sing, and Richard and I sat down. We had a nice talk, and he says, "I think you should take the offers." And
I love
and we ended
I love
up
your
taking it.
I love your imitation of Dr.
Right.
speaking.
Yeah. Limmie, you should consider these offers because they may not come back. So
Solid
I
point.
so
Solid.
I took them. I went off and as I made a couple of regional house debuts, and
And
as
what kind of repertoire at this point?
actually I was doing it was more kind of secondary roles at this point. I did like Spoletta and Tosca, so it wasn't no big stuff other than maybe some oratorio things. Um, but did that for a while, and um, in the midst of all of this, and traveling and whatnot, and I lost my grandmother,
Oh,
and she was the probably my biggest support that I could have asked for. My grandfather passed away when I was in sixth grade. So from that point on, I started staying with my grandmother so that she wouldn't be by herself. Um, Once I learned about opera and whatnot, I started watching things on PBS, which is where I was exposed to people like Leontine Price and Jesse Norman, Kathleen Battle, uh, Grace Bumbry, were these people I'd never imagined. George Shirley. I didn't know that these people existed for the
wow.
majority of my life at this point. And my grandmother was in her 90s, and I would sit there and watch this stuff. And she would sit and watch with me. And she would say, I don't understand a word they're saying, but it's really beautiful. And, and she'd say, "This is what you want to do?" And I said, "I think so." And she said, "Well, if this is what you want to do, you can do it." And so one of the last things she saw was a recital I did in my hometown. I came home and did a fundraiser recital, and that was one of the last times she saw me perform. Um, and then after she passed away, I lost the desire to sing. I didn't want to sing anymore. So, and I'd always made myself a promise that if whatever I'm doing stops being enjoyable, I'm not going to do it anymore. So that's what I did. I walked away. I stopped singing. Um, just
Wow.
any contracts I had at the time, I canceled, and I just completely walked away, and started pursuing other interests that I'd had as a kid. Um, that's when I went to work for Live Nation Entertainment, which used to be Clear Channel, which is one of the largest concert promoters and live entertainment promoters in the world. So I went to work for them and in their security department,
Okay.
which is something I'd always been interested in, and worked for them for about 4 years, and then ended up starting my own company, a security firm, where we did concert tours and special events and executive protection and whatnot, and did that for. Oh,
Uh-oh.
can you hear me?
I can hear you, but your camera for some reason.
Camera drop out.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, while we can still hear you, thankfully, I'll pop up
Okay.
your
Well,
very own claw.
well, I did I started my own company and was working and traveling and got to work with a lot of great people in the entertainment industry and doing concert tours and whatnot. And did that until I started my company in 2005.
Okay.
And then in 2007, I was on a tour and I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and she said, "Hey, I just got a call from a friend, and they're looking for someone for um, a political campaign." And I gave them your name, and I said, "Okay." She goes, "They're going to be calling you, so just make sure you answer the call." I get a call from a guy that didn't know him. He said, "Hi, is this Limmie?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hi, Limmie. I'm so and so, and I'm with Barack Obama's campaign." for president. We're looking for staff members and talking to people around Missouri. Your name has come up several times in conversations. Would you be interested in coming and working for the campaign? And so I'll consider it.
Okay.
And I thought about it for a while, and I said,
Like as security?
no. As a campaign staffer, so I would be
Oh,
running an area, a region for the campaign,
okay.
overseeing campaign activities. Um, so I decided to join on. I joined on as a field organizer with the campaign, and I was overseeing five counties here in Missouri, um, and started planning and getting volunteers and having events and whatnot, and it was so I stopped singing. This was 2000 was the year I stopped singing, um, and my journey back to singing started basically in 2007, and it was through the campaign. As I was working on the campaign, we had a couple of events, and there was one particular event where a young lady who had won a pageant was supposed to sing the national anthem, and I guess she got cold feet and didn't show up. And so my boss is kind of freaking out a little bit, and he finally looks and goes, "Limmie, you can sing the national anthem." And I was like, "No, I don't think so." He goes, "No, I remember on your application, on your resume, you used to be an opera singer. You can sing the national anthem." And I said, "Yeah, but you realize I haven't sung in a few years now." He goes,
Right.
"Nobody's going to know." And so I sang the national anthem at this event. And as I was singing, I started hearing things in my voice that I hadn't heard before. And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting."
Like
You know,
what?
the timbre had darkened.
Okay.
The voice had grown. It had this freshness to it that I guess from the years of not using it as
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
and it kind of piqued my interest. So I sang the national anthem at this event, and a couple months later, another event came up, and he said, "Limmie, we need you to do the anthem again." This time, I noticed the same things again. And I said, "This is interesting. This is not the voice I remember leaving, you know,
Yeah.
7 years ago." When I stopped singing, I considered myself to be a full lyric at the time,
Okay.
but this was not the voice of a full lyric that I was hearing. Um, so after the campaign, I started digging through my storage, and I found um, several videotapes of my lessons from college with Richard.
Hmm.
And I started at the very beginning, basically, and started working with those lesson tapes, and got to the point where I'd worked through all of those lesson tapes.
Wow.
And I said, this is something interesting is going on, and I think I need to pursue this. So once I got through all the tapes, I said, I need to find a teacher, someone with a set of ears that I trust. And so I remember reaching out. I'm here in Missouri. I'm about 100 miles from Memphis, is the closest major city. So I reached out to, and I see she's here, Sandra Franks, who's in the chat right now. And I said I had met Sandy while I was a college student doing research with Richard, and we had gone to Memphis to do some research, and that's where Sandy and I met.
Okay.
So I called Sandy and I said, "Hey, Sandy, I'm getting back into singing, I think, and I've gotten as far as I can as on my own, and I'm looking for a teacher. Do you know any teachers in Memphis that you think might work for me?" And she named off a couple names, and then she said, "I'm teaching now." And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, do you mind if I come down and take a lesson with you and see how things go?" So I did, and I went down and took a lesson, and you know, her style is very similar to Richard's. And having knowing her, I already had that trust in
Sure.
her that I needed. That I knew she wasn't going to steer me in the wrong direction. So I started working with Sandra, with Dr. Franks, and I worked on my own. This was probably at this point I worked on my own for about 2 years before I found Dr. Franks, and then took intermittent lessons with her for off and on for a year or so, and was finally convinced to do my first competition in 2012 for the National Opera Association, which is the picture you have up is actually from that competition.
Oh, how funny.
So I went in and I sang. We had to have our 5 arias. I was in the artist division. My 5 arias were the Dio mi potevi from Otello, um, Notum Notum from Siegfried, Now the Great Bear from Peter Grimes. I had a French one. I think it was the Pourquoi me réveiller.
Oh, okay.
And then I had I can't remember what the fifth one was, but I went in and did we had our preliminary round. I sang my first couple pieces and was selected for the finals. And as I get up on stage during the finals, um, I picked my first aria and I started with the Dio mi potevi. And the judges asked for um, they asked for a second aria. After the second aria, I was like, okay, I'm done. Let's get this. I can get ready to get off stage. They asked for a third aria. And after the third aria, the judge looks at me and smiles. So, can we hear this aria? So they asked for the fourth aria.
I hope they gave you a concert fee.
No. And then afterwards, the last thing they asked for was the Wagner. So they ended up asking for all 5 pieces, all my 5 of my pieces in the finals.
Wow.
I mean, it got to the point I finally asked, I said, this is work. Do you mind if I take my jacket off? So this was probably around, this is in the Otello in the first one. By the end of it, I had to take the jacket off. And, then I sang the Notum Notum, and it was fine. I was like, okay, there's nothing else for me to sing, so they got to let me go now. And I ended up winning that competition.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, and then, from there, did you get immediately back into singing and just start?
I started doing some competitions. At first, I did the Liederkranz. I did the
London's.
No, I did. I was already aged out of the Londons, so it was at this point I'd already aged out of those competitions. So the only ones I was eligible for were ones who had Wagner divisions,
Right.
Which was Liederkranz, and then there was another one, which if someone might know it in the chat, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Gerda Listener or
Listener, that was it.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I did those 2 competitions, and I did. I was a finalist in those, and did some auditions, and basically it was from some of the regional things I'd done and had posted online. I started to build a little bit of a following, just through my YouTube and through word of mouth. Once friends on Facebook found out I was singing again, they started spreading the word, and I would get calls from friends and say, hey, my husband is running a company. Do you mind if I share some of your stuff with him? And sure, go ahead. And, that's how I got my first Canio. I got my first Otello from Louis and Maria. I was driving home one day, my phone rings, and it's Louis. He goes, is this the guy I heard on YouTube?
I don't know. What were you listening to?
And he offered me my first Otello for their festival.
Wow.
Which I'll be forever grateful to them
Of course.
for that opportunity
Absolutely.
to get that role under my belt and get it off the ground. And and then I have the opportunity to sing here in my home state, which I rarely had a chance to do.
Yeah.
Um, Prior to that, and thanks to Springfield Regional Opera, and Michael Spires and whatnot, there, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Most of that is up on YouTube. Yeah. The Otello that y'all did.
yeah. They actually, I don't know if the full performance is up. I've been trying to get them to stream that, live stream it,
I wish
because
I wish they
it was
would.
a wonderful performance.
Clips that I've seen of that Otello at Springfield is just phenomenal. I mean, what a amazing proof that here in Springfield, Missouri, of all places, you can come together with such an incredible cast and really something special. So, now we of course are in that bizarre time where none of us are really having opportunities to sing.
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to? Once hopefully this stuff ends, you got some roles that you'd like to try out, or you got
Yeah,
some.
I'm actually in the process of learning a couple of things. I've been working on Caliph,
Oh yeah.
working on. Actually, I was supposed to sing one later this year, but it's not going to happen. Um,
What turned on?
no, not turned out, but oh gosh, I'm shooting like the Beethoven,
Fidelio.
Fidelio. Yeah, I was going to get a chance to do that later this year, but it's not going to happen. But I'm still learning the role.
Yeah.
I'm also working on Peter Grimes,
So
which is a role I would love to do. Love to do.
you and me both, man. I've wanted to sing Balstrode for years, so I think that would be. Let's put that out into the universe. You and
Yeah,
I, we do
yeah,
some fellows together. We do some Peter Grimes together. That'll be great.
yeah. It would. Uh, and other than that, I'm having some doing some other singing. As far as we mentioned, we just launched the new venture for our agency, Fame,
Yeah.
Fletcher Management Entertainment, and I did a video for that singing one of my favorite pieces from Rent. You did one of our Garth Brooks' biggest hits. Um, you know, other
Yeah.
than that, I've just been kind of enjoying uh, seeing what my other friends. I'm doing my own little talk show in a way called Listen Up with Limmie,
Yeah.
uh, which I have an episode coming up tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. I'm glad you plugged that. I was about to mention that. So that'll be great.
And but seeing all the great things my friends are doing, the sit down with LB, the Purple Rose series with Nicole Heason Lane.
Speaking of, did you Larry? So Larry says Limmie brings it. What up, Lance? Yeah, he does. Yeah, Larry, you know a little bit about bringing it.
Yeah, he knows a lot
Evan
of
Bennett.
great.
Evan Bennett didn't realize you're from Missouri. Look at there.
Uh,
Everyone says,
yeah,
what a treat. You're one of my favorite voices under the sun, says Jason Brown. Sandy Franks, Wagner. Wow. Uh, Evan Bennett says, I remember watching videos of Limmie singing at Oberlin as part of teaching of singing with Lorraine Montz. Great singing then and now. And then Nicole, who you just mentioned, says she wants your kalaf. She'd pay for that.
I as long as she's singing Liu,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know what is her. I don't know if she still has it up, but she posted a video of her singing Liu.
Uh,
And I think it was somewhere in like Mexico, and it was one of the most gorgeous things I've ever heard.
Nicole has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard of anyone in the world. I mean, it's just unbelievably stunning what she's able to do. I
Yeah.
would, I would even I would even do Ping for. I mean, Ping is a great role, but I've never done Ping. But if I can be in a show with you guys, I'd definitely. Well, hey man, thank you so much for doing this. It was such a pleasure to talk with you and to hear some of the struggles and challenges and the aha moments that you found along the way. And I really appreciate you taking the time and being with us.
Thank you for having me, Weston. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad to be able to call you a friend, and
Absolutely, likewise.
looking forward to a chance we get to do the Verdi and the Peter Grimes.
All of
It's
it.
gonna happen. It's
All of
going.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope Alex is listening.
yeah. Alex, Sarah, Scott, you guys listen?
Yeah.
Make it happen.
All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. And tune in to Limmie. Listen up with Limmie tomorrow at 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Take
man.
care.
Have a good evening. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.